So these congressional hearings have been going on about how aliens or extraterrestrials exist and they come out the ocean. Some of them look or can pass as human and they've been around us for a long time. Some of them possibly live among us, blah, 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 right? And a lot of people are just like, is rent going to go down? Is inflation going to go down? And I get it. But I do still want to talk about something I think is interesting. Some people are saying they're not aliens because they haven't come from outer space. They come from underwater. They're interdimensional. They're fallen angels. You know, there's loads of different theories. Now, I'm going to give the whole thing like a massive benefit of the doubt for a second and just generously assume that this is all true. As in, they actually do have evidence of these beings and it's not just a distraction to try and take us away from how crap everything is in the world right now. Let's just generously assume for a moment they're telling the truth, right? Now, if that is the case, my theory is that they're not extraterrestrial, they're not interdimensional, and they're not supernatural. If there's any piece of media that's the closest to being correct about what these things are, I think it's Assassin's Creed. Hear me out, right? There's this guy called Graham Hancock, and he's done this whole load of research into something called the Younger Dryas period, where there was massive floods and huge shifts in how the polar magnetics worked in the planet, and it wiped everything out, and it was basically like a global reset. And this happens in a 12,000 year cycle, so it's happened before many times. Now, Earth is about 4 billion years old, something like that. And anatomically modern humans, like humans as we exist today, Homo sapiens, have apparently been around for 300,000 years, which is like a grain of sand in the desert in terms of the whole timeline of Earth. We have been around for a blink of an eye at best. But doesn't that kind of seem strange that as far as we know, we're the first and only intelligent beings to walk the Earth? The dinosaurs existed longer than we have existed, and as far as we know, didn't become intelligent, or at least not intelligent in the way that we think of intelligence. Doesn't that seem strange? All that time that was available for evolution to take place to bring about consciousness as we know it, and we're the only ones. Doesn't that seem odd and mathematically unlikely? So my theory is that if these creatures or beings exist and have this technology, they're actually precursors. They're other intelligent species that came before us. Now, if you're a big fan of Assassin's Creed, you'll know exactly where I'm going with this, because the lore of that franchise delves deep into this idea that there were advanced civilizations of not humans, but things that were even more advanced than humans and had been around for longer and had technology that was so advanced and so powerful that we as Homo sapiens would view it as magic and would think of them as gods. Now, doesn't that kind of make sense in a lot of ways, that why our early civilizations and our early ancestors would have viewed beings like this as gods, and that's why we have stories about gods, and that's why we were able to learn about agriculture and building monoliths and pyramids and huge things that apparently, we were only just getting started on being able to farm and, write and do astronomy. But we were also able to build all these crazy things. Now, there's loads of archaeological explanations for it, but it does seem kind of plausible that, somebody might have taught us that. If we were only just getting started in a lot of ways in terms of civilization, maybe someone passed that knowledge on to us. Now, Graham Hancock, who I mentioned earlier, has delved into this idea quite a lot, and he's kind of been laughed at for it. But if the government is saying that, super advanced beings do exist and they have anti-gravity technology and technology that allows them to travel at insane G-forces without it affecting them, and possibly sound wave technology and energy technology, maybe they're remnants of something that has previously existed and is lingering on and had to hide away because they were going extinct. I know it sounds like super far-fetched, but if you were part of a civilization that was like super advanced, but you had to go through a massive extinction event to the point that was hardly any of you left, and then Homo sapiens, who you see as like lesser beings, became the dominant species. Maybe you would go into hiding, and if you had the technology to live under the water or live in remote places that were inaccessible to us, you could probably do it. I mean, for all we know, there's like underwater cities or underground cities, like, or even hidden cities like Wakanda style cities out there. For all we know, we don't know. And I know it sounds really cheesy and far-fetched, but if generously they're telling the truth, that they've recovered advanced technology and they're saying it doesn't come from space, it comes from underwater, what other explanation is there other than, yeah, maybe interdimensional? But doesn't it just seem a little bit more plausible that, we have other types of ancestors that might be as advanced or way more advanced than we are, that were around for a lot longer? And people could say, well, we would have found archaeological evidence of these people, like, maybe stories about Atlantis being super advanced and global societies, and that's where all that comes from, but we would have found evidence of it. But maybe we have. In Africa, there's that ringed like structure that they found that they said could be Atlantis, but also, over millions of years, all the continents have shifted. We had like Pangaea, which broke apart, and then you've got all these like different land masses that have changed. There could be so much stuff underwater that we've never found. There could be things in deserts hidden under sand. We do archaeology. Modern archaeology is mostly like done in areas where we already kind of like live, in super remote areas, like in the middle of a desert. It's hard to conduct like proper archaeology, and there's thousands of miles of sand that no one has ever digged under. We don't really know what's under there. And if the planet has changed its axis or changed its magnetic, the poles, those areas we know at one point would have been like rainforests or different environments altogether. Who knows what could be under there? So people laugh at people like Graham Hancock for having these insane like conspiracy theories or whatever. But doesn't these two things kind of feel like they could line up a little bit? His theories about like advanced prior beings to humans passing on knowledge and technology to us when we were a young species kind of lines up with the idea of the government saying that there are advanced beings that live on Earth that we don't know about and that don't come from space. So I know it sounds mental, but it's cool to think about, and I just think if it's true, and I'm not saying it is, if it's true and they actually do have all this evidence, that seems like the most likely scenario to me. Assassin's Creed kind of got it right.